The streetlights bleed across the wet asphalt, blurring into streaks of gold and red. Rain-slicked hair sticks to my face. My coat is soaked through, but I don't feel the cold. My breath is a thin cloud in the sharp air. Across the street, the flashing blue and red pulse of police lights paints the scene in fractured, anxious color. A woman stands, silhouetted against the squad car, her hands behind her back. They are cuffing her. She is shouting something I can't hear over the rain and the distant city noise, her face contorted in disbelief, in sudden, stark terror. Her perfect hair is coming undone, sticking to her cheeks. Her expensive clothes hang limp and dark with the damp. She struggles, just for a second, a small, futile twitch against the grip of the officer. And then she goes still. Her head drops. She looks utterly broken. And there, standing frozen in the doorway of the building she just left, is my husband. His face is a mask I've never seen. Not anger, not sadness, but a complete, hollowed-out incomprehension. Like the universe just folded in on itself and swallowed the ground beneath his feet. He was smiling moments ago. I saw him through the window, leaning in close to her, laughing. Now, his smile is gone, wiped away so completely it feels like it never existed. His eyes are fixed on her, on the glint of the metal on her wrists. The world outside seems to fade for him. The rain, the lights, the noise, all of it just background static to the implosion happening inside him. He raises a hand, a slow, trembling motion, as if to reach for her, to stop it. But the hand stops in midair, hovering uselessly. He makes a sound then, a low choked gasp that I feel rather than hear from across the street. He sways. His knees buckle. And he collapses, crumpling to the ground in a heap of expensive fabric and shattered reality. He didn't see me standing there. He didn't see me watching the carefully constructed world he built on my foundation crumble around him. He only saw her. And in that moment, he lost everything. If you've ever felt this way, felt the ground shift under you, the cold, sharp taste of betrayal and the strange, terrible satisfaction of watching consequences arrive, tell me in the comments. I read all of them. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. My life before this felt solid, like a well-built house. Foundations laid deep, walls strong, roof holding back the rain. I built it myself, mostly. The company started with nothing but a laptop, a crappy apartment, and an idea that everyone told me was crazy. Too ambitious. Too risky. But I poured every ounce of my energy, every late night, every skipped meal, every drop of sweat and tears into it. And it grew. It thrived. It became something real, something powerful. We designed software, complex systems that streamlined logistics for major corporations. It wasn't glamorous, but it was necessary, and it paid well. More than well. It paid beautifully. James came into my life when the company was still small, still finding its feet, but already showing promise. He was charming, supportive. He believed in me, or at least he said he did. He had a background in finance, nothing spectacular, but enough to understand the numbers, the projections, the growth charts. I brought him in, first as a consultant, then as a partner. Not an equity partner initially, but someone I trusted implicitly with the financial side of things while I focused on the product, the clients, the vision. We got married a few years later. It felt right. He was my anchor, or so I thought. He handled the money, the budgets, the incoming payments, the outgoing expenses. It was a division of labor that worked. I built the engine, he managed the fuel lines. Our life together was comfortable. More than comfortable. We had the house, the cars, the vacations. I worked hard, but I also enjoyed the fruits of my labor, and I shared them freely with him. His role in the company grew. He became Chief Financial Officer, my CFO, my husband. The lines blurred, which felt natural, felt safe. He knew everything about the business, about our finances. He was inside the machine, turning the dials, monitoring the gauges. And I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, my partner in life and in business. He slept beside me every night. He ate breakfast across from me every morning. He knew my dreams, my fears, my vulnerabilities. Or so I thought. The first sign was small. A tiny tremor in the foundation I thought was solid. It was maybe a year ago, or a little more. I was reviewing a quarterly report, something I didn't do with the same microscopic detail I used to because James handled it. But something caught my eye. A discrepancy. Nothing huge, just a few $1,000s missing from a specific account. An account used for vendor payments. I queried it. I sent James a note. He waved it off. Said it was a clerical error, a misclassification by the new junior accountant. He said he'd fixed it. It was plausible. New staff, make mistakes. I accepted it. The house felt solid again. The tremor was forgotten. But then another one came. And another. Small drips at first. A payment that didn't quite match the invoice. A transfer that seemed odd. Each time I questioned it, James had an answer. A logical explanation. A supplier issue. A bank delay. A software glitch. He was smooth, reassuring. My concerns felt petty next to his calm explanations. Was I micromanaging? Was I losing my touch, becoming paranoid now that the company was successful? He made me feel like I was being overly cautious, like I didn't fully grasp the complexities of large-scale finance, which, to be fair, he was supposed to be the expert in. I started to doubt my own instincts. The ground felt a little less firm now, but I told myself it was just my imagination, the stress of running a big operation. The drips became a trickle. Tens of thousands. Transactions that didn't seem to correspond to any business activity. Payments to shell companies with vague names. When I pressed him harder, his demeanor shifted. The calm reassurance was replaced by irritation, by subtle accusations that I didn't trust him, that I was undermining his authority, that I was being ungrateful for everything he did. He turned my questions into a commentary on my character. It was a subtle manipulation, a way to make me back down, to feel guilty for asking. And for a while it worked. I hated the conflict. I hated the distance it put between us. I wanted my solid house back, my comfortable life, my trusting relationship. I told myself I was wrong, that it was all explainable. But the numbers don't lie. Not forever. The financial strain on the company started to become noticeable. Cash flow tightened in ways it shouldn't have. We were profitable, highly profitable. Where was the money going? It was like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom, except I couldn't find the hole. The stress mounted. My sleep suffered. I found myself staring at spreadsheets late into the night, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. James was often out late now, too.
Business dinners, he said.
Client meetings. I was too tired, too worried about the company's financials to question his schedule much. Then came the day the ground didn't just tremble. It split open. I had reached a point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. The amounts were too large, the explanations too flimsy. I couldn't risk the company, not the thing I had built with my own hands. I made a decision. A hard one. I hired an external forensic accountant. I didn't tell James. I couldn't. The possibility, the dawning, terrifying possibility that he might be involved was a cold hand squeezing my heart. But I pushed that thought down. I told myself the accountant would find an external leak, a sophisticated cyberattack, anything but him. The accountant, a quiet woman named Clara with piercing eyes and a methodical calm, worked for weeks. She didn't give me daily updates, just asked for more access, more records. The tension during that time was unbearable. Living with James, pretending everything was normal, sharing meals, sharing a bed, while this secret investigation was happening felt like a play where I was the only actor who knew the script. Every touch felt like a lie. Every conversation felt like a tightrope walk over an abyss. The day Clara called, my hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. She didn't mince words. "It's not external," she said, her voice low and grave. "The funds are being systematically diverted internally." My breath hitched.
"Who?"
I whispered, though I already knew the answer. There was a pause. A long, heavy silence. "The transactions are being initiated and authorized from your husband's accounts," she said softly. My world tilted. The solid house didn't just have a hole, it was built on quicksand. It wasn't just company money. It was my money. Money I earned. Money that represented my life's work. Money meant to secure our future. The future I thought we were building together. It wasn't small amounts anymore. It was millions. Large, staggering sums siphoned off over time, hidden in layers of complex transactions designed to look like legitimate business expenses or investments. It was sophisticated, cold, deliberate theft. Clara kept digging, tracing the money trail. Where was it going? What was he doing with it? The answers came back, each one a fresh wound. It wasn't fueling some secret business venture gone wrong. It wasn't a gambling addiction. It wasn't some hidden family he was supporting.
It was
Lavish, expensive gifts, high-end travel,
property.
and then the jewelry. The report detailed a series of increasingly large payments to a high-end jeweler across the country. Not for investments, not for resale, for specific, extravagant pieces. And one payment stood out. One massive transfer. Over $1 million. For a single item. The description was vague in the financial records, just a transaction ID. But Clara, with her relentless tracing, managed to connect it to an internal invoice number from the jeweler cross-referenced with shipping manifests. A diamond ring. A specific, spectacular, custom-designed diamond ring. Valued at over $1 million. The air left my lungs. $1 million. For a ring. Who was it for? Who would he buy a ring like that for? It wasn't for me. Our anniversary was months ago, and he'd given me a nice, but modest, gift. This kind of purchase wasn't just expensive, it was a statement. A grand gesture. A declaration. My mind, reeling from the financial betrayal, started to piece together the other scattered anomalies. The late nights. The increasing emotional distance. The defensiveness. It wasn't just fraud. It was infidelity. Clara found more. Emails. Encrypted messages. Not just financial records. She was thorough. The recipient of the ring wasn't hard to find once the money trail led to her. A woman I vaguely knew of. A competitor's employee. Someone he'd met at an industry conference. Her name was Sarah. And he wasn't just buying her gifts. He was building a life with her. Using my money. Our money. The emotional freefall began then. The shock of the financial theft morphed into a sickening, gut-wrenching pain. It wasn't just the money, though that was devastating. It was the absolute, soul-deep betrayal. The man I loved, the man I built my life with, the man I trusted with everything, was systematically stealing from me to fund a lavish affair, to build a life with another woman. He was using the very success I created to pay for the destruction of my world. The days and weeks that followed were a blur of cold fury and profound grief. I felt like a ghost in my own life. I moved through the motions, ran the company, talked to James, all while carrying this unbearable weight of knowledge. Eating dinner with him felt like choking on ash. Listening to him talk about his day felt like being buried alive in lies. The house, once my sanctuary, became a stage for a terrible play, every corner filled with the echoes of his deceit. I slept in the same bed as the man who was robbing me blind and planning a future with someone else. It was a specific, exquisite kind of torture. I didn't confront him. The initial impulse, the raw, animal urge to scream, to smash things, to unleash the tidal wave of pain and rage, was powerful. But Clara, and the lawyer she recommended, a steely-eyed woman named Eleanor, advised against it. "He'll destroy the evidence," Eleanor said, her voice calm and steady. "He'll hide assets. You need to build your case methodically, legally." They understood that this wasn't just about divorce. It was about grand theft, about corporate fraud, about a crime with serious consequences. So I waited, and I planned. The grief solidified into something hard and cold inside me. Every conversation with James, every seemingly normal moment, was fuel for the fire burning beneath the ice. I watched him, really watched him, for the first time in years. I saw the subtle shifts in his behavior, The way he avoided my gaze when the conversation turned to finances, the forced casualness when he mentioned being out late, it was all there, the performance of a guilty man, but I hadn't seen it because I hadn't been looking for it, couldn't conceive of it. Now, the mask he wore was transparent. Eleanor worked with the authorities. This wasn't a simple civil matter anymore. This was criminal. But catching him wasn't enough. He was cunning, connected. He could drag this out for years, hide the money, ruin the company in the process. And the thought of him and Sarah walking away, him with maybe a slap on the wrist after spending years of my money on her, was unbearable. I wanted justice. I wanted him to understand the magnitude of what he had done, the ruin he had wrought. And I wanted Sarah, the recipient of the $1 million ring bought with stolen funds, to face consequences too. Eleanor explained the legal angle regarding the ring. Receiving stolen property. If she knew, or had reason to know, the ring was bought with illegally obtained funds, she could be implicated.
Did she know?
Maybe, maybe not. But the sheer value of the ring, the sudden wealth James was displaying, it stretched credulity to think she believed it was all legitimately acquired. Especially when he was the CFO of my company. The plan solidified over weeks of hushed meetings with Eleanor and the investigators. It wasn't just about an arrest. It was about timing, about maximum impact. James was careful. He kept the ring off the company premises, off our joint accounts. But he didn't keep it a secret from Sarah. He flaunted it, I learned from the evidence Clara gathered. It was a symbol of his supposed success, his devotion to her. It was her most prized possession. And that was his fatal flaw. He couldn't resist showing it off, couldn't resist giving her that ultimate, glittering proof of his love. He thought he was untouchable. He thought his financial maneuvering was flawless. He thought I was oblivious. He didn't count on my forensic accountant being a bloodhound, didn't count on my lawyer being a shark, and didn't count on my icy determination to see justice served in a way that would hit him where it hurt the most, his pride, his control, and his carefully constructed fantasy world with Sarah. We needed to catch Sarah with the ring, and ideally, in a situation where James was present. It couldn't be random. It had to be orchestrated. The investigators tracked Sarah. They knew where she lived, where she worked, her habits. And they knew James was still seeing her, despite the mounting pressure I was subtly putting on him about the company's finances, playing dumb, of course. He was like a rat returning to the cheese. The opportunity arose. A high-profile industry event. One James, as CFO, was expected to attend. Sarah would be there too, representing her company. These events were where they usually met, where he could see her without raising suspicion, blending in with the crowd. And Sarah, according to intelligence gathered, intended to wear the ring. It was a statement piece, after all. A $1 million diamond. The day of the event felt surreal. I got ready as if it were any other business function. I chose my dress carefully, something sharp, powerful, controlled. I did my hair, my makeup, my face a mask of serene professionalism. James was oblivious. He was stressed about the company finances, stressed about my increasing meddling as he saw it, but he had no idea of the trap that was closing. He even commented that I looked tired. I smiled thinly and said the company's stress was getting to me. He agreed, conveniently blaming external factors. The arrogance was breathtaking. He left for the event earlier than me. I said I'd meet him there. He kissed me goodbye, a perfunctory peck on the cheek. The man who stole my life's work, who was using it to court another woman, kissed me goodbye before going to meet her, wearing a watch I bought him. The casual cruelty of it was staggering. But I held it together. The ice inside was holding firm. I drove to the event venue, the city lights reflecting in the wet streets. The rain had started, a cold, persistent drizzle. I parked a block away, in a quiet side street. I wasn't going inside.
Not yet.
My role was different. I sat in my car, the engine off, the windows slightly fogged, and waited. I knew the timeline. The investigators had coordinated with the local police. There were plainclothes officers inside the venue, confirming Sarah was there, confirming she was wearing the ring. More officers were stationed outside, ready to move. Eleanor was nearby, monitoring communications. My part was simply to be a witness, to see it unfold, to see the moment his world shattered. My phone buzzed. A message from Eleanor. She's wearing it. Subject is with her. Officers are in position. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. My hands were shaking again, but this time not from fear or pain, but from a potent mix of anticipation and dread. This was it. The culmination of months of silent suffering, of covert action, of cold, calculated planning. I got out of the car. The rain was heavier now, cold and relentless. I pulled my coat tighter around me and walked towards the venue, but stopped across the street. I found a doorway, a recessed alcove of a closed shop, offering a sliver of shelter from the downpour. From there, I had a clear view of the main entrance of the building where the event was being held. The entrance was a large glass and steel structure, gleaming under the building's external lights. You could see the edges of the lobby, the movement of people inside. I waited. The minutes stretched into an eternity. The rain drummed on the pavement, on the cars passing by. The city hummed its indifferent tune. My mind was strangely blank, then flooded with images, starting the company, the early struggles, meeting James, our wedding, the quiet dinners, the trust, the creeping doubt, the stark reports from Clara, the cold planning with Eleanor. It all led to this single, rain-slicked moment. And then, the glass doors of the venue opened. A group of people came out, seeking shelter under the awning to open umbrellas. Among them were James and Sarah. They were laughing close together. Sarah raised a hand to adjust her hair, and I saw it. Even from across the street, even in the dim light and the rain, I saw the impossible flash of the $1 million diamond on her finger. It was huge, vulgar, a beacon of his betrayal, bought with the very money I had earned building the life he was destroying. My breath caught in my throat. It was real. Everything was real. The theft, the mistress, the ring. It wasn't a nightmare. And now, the reckoning was real too. Just then, two figures in plain clothes stepped out from the shadows near the entrance. They approached James and Sarah calmly. They showed badges. My heart leaped into my throat. This was it. The moment of the trap. I couldn't hear their words over the rain, but I saw the reaction. Sarah's head snapped up, her laughter dying instantly. James froze, his smile dissolving, replaced by confusion. The officers were talking to Sarah, their gestures polite but firm. One of them gestured towards her hand, towards the ring. Sarah's face twisted. She started shaking her head, stepping back. James stepped forward, looking indignant, trying to intervene. That's when the uniformed officers moved in. They emerged from parked cars, from around the corner. The flashing blue and red lights began to pulse, silent from my distance, but screaming emergency. Sarah was backing away, her eyes wide with panic. She tried to pull her hand away, but the officer took it gently but firmly. I saw the glint of metal again, not the diamond this time, but the handcuffs. They were placing her under arrest. On the street, in the pouring rain, in front of the building, in front of anyone who happened to be watching. And that's when I saw James. He was standing there, his hand reaching out, just as I saw him do later when he collapsed. But in that initial moment, before he crumpled, I saw the sheer, unadulterated shock on his face. He hadn't expected this. He expected maybe a confrontation with me, maybe divorce papers, maybe even charges against him, eventually. But he hadn't expected her to be caught. He hadn't expected the consequences of his crime to land so swiftly, so publicly, on the person he was trying to impress, to build a future with. He thought he was protecting her, shielding her from the truth of where the money came from. He thought he was too smart to get caught, and even if he was, she would be safe. But I had orchestrated it differently. The charge wasn't against him yet. It was against her, for receiving stolen goods. The $1 million ring, bought with embezzled funds from my company, was the evidence. By arranging for her to be caught with the ring, by highlighting that specific transaction, I had ensured that the immediate, public consequence landed squarely on the object of his affection, exposing his crime in the most humiliating, devastating way possible for him. He wasn't collapsing because he was arrested then and there. He was collapsing because because his grand gesture of love, bought with theft, had just landed her in handcuffs and shattered the fantasy he had been living. He was blindsided by the legal consequences hitting his mistress, triggered by the very thing he stole for her. My trap wasn't just catching the thief. It was ensuring the prize he stole turned into a poison for the person he gave it to. That was the twist. The turn of the knife. I watched him fall. It wasn't dramatic, like in the movies. It was a slump, a giving way, a man whose internal scaffolding had just been kicked out from under him. He landed on the wet pavement, not with a thud, but a soft, broken sound. The rain plastered his hair to his forehead. He looked small, pathetic, utterly defeated. The officers securing Sarah glanced at him briefly, but their priority was her. Someone from the venue rushed out, seeing him on the ground. The scene was chaos now, the blue and red lights flashing, people milling, pointing. But my focus remained on him, a crumpled figure in the rain, his face a mask of ruin, realizing in that instant the full, catastrophic scale of the consequences I had set in motion. He stole my money, my trust, my life. And I used his own crime, and the object of his affection, to bring his world crashing down. I stayed hidden in the doorway for few more minutes, the rain soaking into my bones. I watched them put Sarah into the back of the squad car. I watched people tend to James, helping him sit up, wrap him in a coat. He looked like an old man, his face slack, his eyes vacant. The contrast between the man who had stood so confidently just moments before, laughing with his mistress, and the broken figure on the ground was stark, chilling. There was no triumph in me, not the kind I might have expected, only a profound, aching emptiness. The cold satisfaction of seeing justice served was there. Yes, a hard knot in my gut. But it was mixed with the bitter taste of loss. This wasn't just a criminal, this was my husband. The man I loved. The man I built a life with. Seeing him broken wasn't a victory. It was a tragedy. A tragedy of his own making, but a tragedy nonetheless. I turned then, and walked back to my car, the rain washing over me. I felt utterly drained, hollowed out. The house wasn't just damaged, it was gone. Burned to the ground. The foundation wasn't just weak, it was poisoned earth. There was nothing left but the rain, the cold, and the long, hard road ahead. The legal process was long and draining. Sarah's arrest was just the beginning. It opened the door for the charges against James. The evidence was overwhelming. The money trail was clear. His attempts to explain the transactions fell apart under scrutiny. His defense crumbled when faced with the forensic reports and the testimony of Clara and Eleanor. He was charged with multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. The scale of the theft, the deliberate complexity of his methods, the breach of trust as a CFO and a husband, it was all laid bare. Sarah, facing charges for receiving stolen property, the ring was seized as evidence, reportedly cooperated, detailing how James had presented the ring, claiming it was a symbol of his success and his future with her, carefully omitting the fact he had stolen the money from his wife's company. The irony was a cold blade twist. He stole from me to buy her affection, and that very act led to her legal troubles and his downfall. He tried to fight it at first, denial, bluster, attempts to shift blame. But as the walls closed in, as the plea deal was offered, significantly harsher because of the amount stolen and the damage to the company, the fight went out of him. He looked increasingly frail, his confidence replaced by a nervous tic, his eyes darting constantly. The man I knew was gone, replaced by a shell. He pleaded guilty. The sentence was significant. Years in prison. The company, thankfully, survived. The theft had been substantial, putting a strain on resources, but the core business was strong, the team loyal. We cut costs, restructured, brought in a new, trustworthy CFO. Rebuilding was hard, grueling work. Repairing the financial damage was one thing. Repairing my own trust, my own sense of safety in the world, was another matter entirely. The divorce was swift, clinical. There was nothing left to fight over, not really. What he hadn't spent or given away was gone, seized by the authorities or tied up in legal battles. The house was sold. I moved into a smaller place. It felt strange, starting over again, but also lighter. The weight of his lies, of the double life, was lifted. Sometimes I see things that remind me. A flash of blue and red lights, the scent of rain, the way someone laughs with their head tilted back. And I remember that night, standing in the rain, watching his collapse. It wasn't victory. It was survival. It was the desperate act of a woman pushed too far, forced to dismantle her own life to expose the rot at its core. There's a scar left behind, invisible but deep. It makes me wary, cautious. It's hard to trust again, in business or in life. But the company is thriving. It's mine, truly mine again. Built on my strength, my resilience. The financial reports are clean, transparent. There are no hidden holes, no secret accounts. The foundation is being rebuilt, slower this time, more deliberately, stone by stone. I learned that betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, insidious, a slow poison administered by the hand you trust most. But I also learned that even when everything feels lost, even when the ground opens up beneath you, you can find the strength to stand, to fight, to turn the tables, and to rebuild. My house may be gone, but I am still standing. And I am stronger for having survived the storm. If this story hit close to home, if you've navigated your own storms, your own betrayals, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.